have some riveting conversation today around women amplifying their voices in the boardroom, in leadership positions, and in management teams across the world. So joining us for this conversation is Katharina Dalka, who is the founder and CEO of Stellarone. That's a strategy and investment advisory in tech. We have Roberta Annan, who is a global impact investor and the founder of a €100 million fund supporting Africa's creative sector. And she's a goodwill ambassador for the United Nations. And then, of course, Aningo, who is the executive director of Global Group Media. And she's the creator of the Rising series, Africa Gulf Cooperation Council, and then, as I said earlier, this Rising Women series on CNBC, which she is driving. She has been a communications director for 15 years in many, many geographies across the world. So thank you all for joining me for this conversation. And I think, Ani, at this point, it's appropriate to hand over to you to just get a little context around the Rising Women series and what you are hoping to catalyze with the conversation today.
Thank you so much, Bronwyn, for the introduction. I appreciate it. I'm going to start off by saying thank you, first and foremost, to everybody. First of all, thank you to Women in Africa in France. Thank you to Eloise, who organized, coordinated from behind the scenes. Thank you, Katharina, as well, for being on board this platform. Thank you as well, Roberta, as well, all of you for all your time and attention today in this consistent and collective conversation and discourse that we continue to push forward, right? So as Bronwyn said, you know, for me, it was literally the Rising Women series was created really organically, you know, like most things are with women, right? Solving problems, right? Coming to Africa in emerging markets. And just realizing that living in the US and living in Europe, you know, we're just a bit more visible here. We speak about what we want to do. We get funding for it. We get projects here in the US or in Europe, much more than in emerging markets in so many ways. It's such a lack of visibility, such a lack of consistent one and collective visibility for me. I would say it's a passion project. It's a love project. It's been excruciatingly difficult, but so much love and enjoyment as well on the project. So the Rising Women series, we started off with Africa first. We just finished our 5th and last edition. And now we are focusing on launching the Rising Women Middle East edition as well for the next 2-3 years, Rising Women Asia, and so forth, right? And literally, the question is why? Right? Why? We have to find a way to galvanize FDI. We have to find a way to galvanize synergy, partnerships, technical partnerships, knowledge, wisdom within our spaces as well. And we started off with media. So where are we today now with the Rising Women series? The whole idea again is write, speak, meet. We write about you. We put you on platforms, but a virtual live, right? And then we introduce each woman to whoever they want to meet within our network globally. Right. And, you know, 3 years later, you know, 200 women been featured already, galvanized about $2.1 million past 6 months in funding projects in Africa with women-led, women-focused projects in Africa. I think it's nice to finish up and wrap up with this virtual platform. And really, you know, in Africa as well, it's not very homogenous, right? So we try really hard to make sure that we reach out to women from West Africa, Southern Africa, East Africa, Francophone Africa, through networks, right? Like Women in Africa as well. How can we get knowledge, information from women in Tanzania, right? Or in Cote d'Ivoire, or Guinea-Conakry, or Djibouti? How can we come together on platforms, irrespective of geography, more so now than ever? And that's where we are with the Rising Women series for the Africa edition. Once again, thank you very much for the introduction, and I'm gonna, you know, pass it back on to you.
So I think what is remarkable, as you say, there are no geographic boundaries today. And we just look at the composition of our panel. We've got Roberta in Accra, Ghana. We've got Katharina in London, United Kingdom. Ani, you're in Chicago, and I'm in Cape Town, in South Africa. So we've really got a global forum and a global discussion on the go right with us at this moment. Katharina, let me bring you in here, and looking at your advisory status in terms of the tech environment and your experience to date. Give us a little sense around the change that you've seen in the leadership women are basically showing in the boardroom and in management. Are you seeing vocalization? Are you seeing action? Are you seeing execution, Katharina?
Not so much, no. To be very, very honest, I don't know, but let me put this answer into my personal business context, right? Because we are navigating between corporate finance and technology, which are two sectors that are very, very strongly male dominated. Like most of the time when I walk into a meeting room, I'm the only lady and I'm the youngest one, which is really down to the sector, which doesn't mean that's like an overall truth. It's just something that I experience in my sector. So
Roberta?
I don't see so much movement. I'm trying to push as much as possible. I'm also chairwoman of a board. So I have a couple of very strong allies that were kindly, supporting me in taking on that role, which is wonderful. But like in an overall sense, I would very much appreciate if that would move a little bit more into that direction.
And I think this is about honest conversation today. So I had this big introduction into, women, all powerful, etc. And there goes Katharina and dashes my hopes and says, no, that's not the reality. But we know this. And I think that's why we're having conversations like today, where we can work our networks, where we can create opportunities, and really a rising tide lifts all ships. So as we do well, we can empower other women to do well. Roberta, €100 million fund in terms of your founding participation there. That's a big number. Give us a sense of what you are seeing in boardrooms. I mean, you're there in Accra, in Ghana right now. I know Ani later is going to give us a little insight into Nigerian boardrooms and some key anecdotes of what it feels to be a woman around the table. Roberta, your perspective?
Yes, thank you so much, Bronwyn. Thank you. And thank you again for Women in Africa and Oni for inviting me. And again, very lovely to meet you, my other counterpart here. So just to give you a little bit of my experience, right? So my background, I'm a scientist by education. I have a master's in biochem and biotech. And then I shifted to work in development. I work with the United Nations Development Program in New York for 4 years. And my role there was resource mobilization. So at a very early stage in my career, I saw the impact that, capital in the private space had, the impact it had on socioeconomic issues in developing countries. So my focus there was to raise capital for climate change adaptation programs in vulnerable communities around the world. And it was great, but it kind of, I would say that at the UN, I lived in a bubble because I had access to everybody. I was respected for my achievements in business. And, I was given a seat at the table at any time I wanted. But the entire story changed when I moved into entrepreneurship. I left the UN at a time when my son was a year old. My marriage didn't work. So I left my marriage and I left my job. And I decided to start my career with a 1-year-old and move back to Africa. So this is when I moved to Ghana. And that is when I realized that the world, this thing that I was promoting so much in New York at the UN of equality, does not exist. In Africa, the system was quite patriarchal, so everything really was dominated by men. Capital was in the hands of men. They had economic power. They had the political power. And all these, everything that it was being done was kind of dictated by men, right? And women just had to fall in line or take a secondary role, whether it's in the home front, in the business front, in political front. This is just the case on the continent. And that was a huge shock for me, because I was very used to doing things differently. Now, it even became more difficult when I decided to do a fund, because I had a very soft London, so I started with my foundation. I was doing advisory work. I was advising family offices and helping them structure their foundations and their giving, because this is what I had seen when I was in the UN, that a lot of Western families had foundation infrastructure around their giving, and African families lacked that. So I was advising a lot of the family offices on how to do that. And then when I shifted into going into my own journey of raising 100 million fund, that is when I realized that there was such a closed door. I was just not allowed to think big. I was not, as a woman, I was not allowed to go into rooms and talk about that kind of money. I mean, I've heard comments of, why you've been looking at 100? Why can't you start with 5? Why can't you start with 10? Why can't you start with 1? Are you sure you're able to deploy that capital? Are you sure you're able to raise that kind of capital? Are you, like, just so many questions about my capability, and people forgetting this is the same person who graduated summa cum laude. If I'm able to do that in a science degree, why can't I position myself with the right team, with the right strategy, raise 100 million fund? And it came to the mere fact that I'm a woman. And I was even told at a point that I needed to have a male fund management team partner with me before I can actually deliver that. But all those challenges, and it's really evident, because these are all not stories. And earlier today, I was doing an interview, and I mentioned the fact that there's so much rhetoric, about women getting access to finance, access to their, to start their business and whatnot. But really, the action needs to take place. And I think it's time for panels like this to really have a call to action. We need to get more women in the boardroom. We need to get more women into fund management roles. We need to get more women funded, because it's when you have economic power, that's when you can drive that transformational impact. And that is all that I'm about. And I love platforms like this that allows us, to really talk openly about these things.
So Roberta, before we move on to you, time frame, how long did it take you to raise 100 million euro? And where did the bulk of that money come from?
So just for clarification, the 100 million makes people believe that I have the money in their account. No. I am raising 100 million in the Euro fund. I'm still in the process of raising. I am very close to my announcing first closing. But what I did was, because I was told I couldn't do it, I raised a little and I started investing. So currently we have 4 businesses that in June we'll be able to unveil these investments, and they've kind of gone really far. I've been just building it quietly and just putting myself into building blocks to actually get to the end goal. So the first 4 businesses that we've invested will be unveiled very soon. And we'll shortly after that, we'll have our first closing, and then we'll make more investments. So I'm building it as I go. It wasn't 100 million check handed to me.
No, and they say it sounds as though you are doing it the right way, and they say that the best revenge is success. So all those naysayers out there, you're going to show them exactly how this works. Now, Ani, let's come to you. And 15 years experience, communications director, multiple geographies, you've seen it all. Give us a sense of the change that you feel is afoot right now when it comes to women in leadership roles, and what you've observed, and of course your own behavior as a leader.
Well, first of all, I think, I was much younger. I started, in my early 20s. I was in the Middle East, in Qatar. And so, I was very brazen, as any young person. And, I just kept going from different countries, to Asia, Middle East, Latin America, North America, Europe, and then Africa last. And so I got into Africa about 4 years ago. And, it's always been about being in these spaces. It's always been about being successful. It's always been about, reaching my goals, my targets, whatever country I'm in, right? And I think as I get older, now in my late 30s, I think maybe we'll be more success. There's a film called The Layer Cake, right? As you're working the project, you get, successful, getting better and better. You take less and less S, keep getting higher and higher, and then you take no BS again. And so for me now, it's about picking and choosing who I want to work with, why I want to work with them, and literally harnessing and galvanizing my tribe. And so before I was not really conscious, but now I can really detect it. And I decide, yes, I want to work with you, or no, I don't. And what happened is, I've been preaching and talking and conversing about, especially being here in North America, we're quite vocal as well, right? Our women here have a strong network in Chicago and New York and DC and LA of women who are very successful, who actually really helped me, get this project started, right? So it's almost here in North America for me. And as Roberta said, when you think about something, you want to do it, you communicate with the right people, it gets done. You find people that can help you, partner with you to have it happen. There's no thought or afterthought per se, as much as it is in emerging markets and then in Africa. And so, I think for me, it was just a matter of being more observant, right, about behavior with women who are successful or in positions of power. I never really noticed. I was kind of bulldoze my way in or get things done and I exit. But now you look at behavior and I realize maybe in Western economies, men are just more used to women in power. There are policies in place when you misbehave. I see Katharina's face. I understand. Trust me, I just came back from Lagos yesterday, and I feel like at least there's a bit more leverage here, more so than in Africa, from my personal experience. So, you get little things from just overt or really overt, blatant forms of you don't belong here, right? And so what happens for me is this: I just want to execute. I'm not a big talker, believe it or not. I just want to produce. But what happens is this: you can't really execute properly when you're having so much, when you're not in an enabling environment. And that's where I am today. So we can, as I mentioned prior to this conversation live, we can be in all the great spaces in the world. But if we don't have enabling environments, from policy, right, to bills, to behavioral changes, to conversation and discourse like this, we cannot execute confidently in these spaces, right? And that's kind of like where I am. So while we're pushing forward, bring more women, more inclusion, more equity inclusion, are we ready? Because I'll tell you, sometimes I'm overly defensive, sometimes overly quiet. Sometimes I just walk out. So my question today is, how do we behave when these behaviors come to us? How do we react? What are our reactions? So that we can confidently and execute what we're there for. A lot of times, I'll tell you sometimes, I don't even execute what I'm supposed to do. I'm busy, dousing fires. And I'm busy smiling, emotions, behavior, like what's going on, and I forget what I'm supposed to do there. So it comes in two parts. More women in, but when we're there, what are we doing when we're there?
And let's pick up on that as a theme. So Katharina, Ani there talking about behavior and how you react to the environment. Now you've already said it's tough out there. I think we've heard that from Roberta, from Ani, and sometimes you do feel like a bull in a china shop. I think that's a very similar theme across all of our speakers. I certainly feel like a bull in a china shop sometimes to get my point of view across. What is it? Is it that level of perceived aggression to stand your ground? How do you respond? Ani there is saying, sometimes she's remained quiet and walked out of the room. What is your approach, Katharina?
I think that for me personally, like with the experience, right now I'm 38. Like when I was young, I didn't have that type of approach. But I think that when I walk into a boardroom right now, the one most important thing for me is the internal alignment, which is I'm aligned with my ideas, the things that I bring to the table, the emotions that come with it, which is something that I thought about before actually entering the boardroom or the meeting, whatever. And then giving this vision to the outside. And then obviously, once this alignment is there and you're just like this and, sitting in your chair and, then every once in a while you have to face aggression and disrespect. And then it never becomes easy. It never is. As soon as it touches my most profound values, it internally, I'm like, ah! But then, I just drive back to my internal alignment, which is helping me.
So is the key there that you don't show emotion? You
No,
don't rise to.
I do show emotion. I do show emotion, and I fully own it. I do not want to be, because I'm a woman, being dehumanized in a boardroom or in a meeting room. So if somebody shows disrespect to me, I'm vocalizing the fact that I'm upset. I will never buy into the same disrespect, but I'll clearly make sure that with my body language, with my tone of voice, etc., I clearly show that I'm upset and I'm not happy. Because it's not because I'm a woman that I'm not allowed to be upset.
Exactly, and the not ignoring the reality in the boardroom is the right thing to do. You need to stand up and take note of, and as you say, don't match with the same level of disrespect, but really bring it to book, the behavior that you've noted. Roberta, I know you're dying. I can see you. Your mic is okay. Let me unmic here. I want to come in. It's yours.
No, I was just actually saying the double standards, right? It's like we face that so many times as women, right? And I even referring back, just dovetailing on what Katharina just said, but even on the fund, that the strategy that is used normally to raise funds is exactly the strategy that I have adopted, but I'm criticized, because I'm a woman. It's like, are you sure this isn't too heavy for you? Are you sure you're able to do this on your own? Don't you need male counterparts to help you in the journey? It's almost as if there's this, thing that says a woman cannot do this to this scale, right? And the double standards, it's just something that we need to address. We don't have to overreact, because the expectation in some cases is that we will be very kind of like dismissive, or we will react in a way that will make us look bad. And then people said, yeah, of course, we're talking about women and the hormones and the usual things that are used to kind of attack us, and we need to find a way to overcome that and still remain calm and be excellent. One of the things that I always find important is that I am constantly being educating myself, so if I don't understand certain things, I'll take a certificate course, I'll take a short course, I'll go back to school, because I want to be able to deliver in a professional way and not only be told that I've been giving an entry because there's some kind of affirmative action that is pushing women into a certain direction. You have to also come prepared, be knowledgeable of whatever space. I was not in VC, this is a very new space for me, but I've had to learn, for the past 3 years, learning, taking courses, learning from experts, making sure that I'm surrounded by a team that can deliver, because, I have a fiduciary duty over someone's money. So that's a very different ballgame than advising somebody on how to deploy capital in their philanthropic endeavors. It's a very different ballgame. Making sure that you're also, you have the right certification and authority to be able to do that, and not cutting corners. These are all things that I've had to learn and take very seriously. And I advise women to do the same.
I see we've got a number of questions coming through. We'll take those in the last 15 minutes of the conversation. So hold those burning questions and you can put them directly to Ani, Katharina, or Roberta in the last 15 minutes of this discussion. Ani, you referred to 200 women through the Women in Africa network, $2.1 million having been raised to this point. And I really think that this element of networking, of what we can do as the power of the collective, is where we are going to be able to make a change. You've made a change in the connections that you've created with this platform amongst those 200 women. What is your vision for the network ultimately?
As Roberta said, driving impact of capital is key, okay? Impact of capital in the private sector, right? Show me the money, okay? Control your money, okay? Share that money, rotate that money within your circle. That's how it's always been done, okay? And irrespective of geography for me. I mean, from Katharina to yourself, to Roberta, to me, we are international global women, right? Roberta was from Ghana, to New York, Katharina is German, in London, has come to Africa so many times, working in Africa as well. So for me, I think it's just let those barriers go. And for me, it's literally about how are we able to galvanize, economically, transfer of knowledge amongst ourselves as well, creating opportunities, right? Literally rotating funds, relationships, network, brain power on a global level, because, from Africa, when we're done with Africa now, we're going to the Middle East network, which is where I even started in the first place, right? And galvanizing the Middle East sector very strongly, then back to Asia, Latin America, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing how one we are, in our thought process, in our culture even. And so my ultimate goal is synergy, complete inclusive synergy amongst women, financially, personally, be friends, right? Network, exchange ideas, right? Irrespective of geography. That's it.
Katharina, are you seeing the benefits of a network? Are you exchanging capital with women and work, etc.? So I wanted to understand whether those transactions are taking place in the network and it is more than just talk.
So regarding your first question, most of our clients are actually men. However, I've recently signed a project with actually my first female customer. And that was absolutely great. Shout out to her. We really appreciate, especially because we are a fully female team and we are experiencing a lot of what Roberta is mentioning. In a nutshell, women can't manage money for whichever reason. We also get a lot of that type of feedback. I get it personally, the team gets it, etc. So yes, I clearly see the benefits. I'm also part of an organization that is called African Women in FinTech and Payment. And it's not only the transactional value of this network, but also the way we lift each other up in an environment that is extremely difficult, where we get a lot of, blowbacks and stuff like that. It also has a very strong emotional value. Beyond just showcasing our expertise, which is entirely part of this network, but as soon as one of us has a win, everybody else is cheering. There's no, and this whole myth of catfighting, etc. I don't experience it at all. The women, the ladies that I actually network with, it's great. It's just lifting me up every day.
So I want to pick up on that point because it's interesting that, as you say, all your clients are male. You've signed your first female client.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that for me, again, is a theme. Is it because women aren't in the decision-making process? They aren't the clients that you are targeting? Why? I mean, and congratulations to you for signing your first client as a first client, a woman. But why is it that you aren't seeing more flows if women are supporting women, just because they're not in the driving seat?
Yes, I think that is a big part of that problem. I may call it a problem, because we're working with investors. So in this situation, most of my clients would be operating partners, strategic partners, and investment funds. And on the other side, if we work with tech corporates, it's either with the CEOs or the CFO or the chief strategy officer or the chief officer of market intelligence. And can I say, these positions are most of the time occupied by men. And I think that is just a historical fact, basically.
Roberta, where is your money coming from? So who is investing in you? When you are getting those checks that you are accumulating, who is giving you that endorsement? How many women are standing behind you with actual money?
In fact, I haven't received a dime for women. Let me just put it that way. Yet. Hopefully I will, but it's been male. And it's been, so the money that I've raised from clients that I've had, that I've nurtured relationships with for over 10 years and want to support me in this new endeavor. So that was like the first cohort of funding that I raised for IFAC. It came from private family offices. So I see that a lot more money is coming in the private space because people believe in me, they want to support me, they want me to be successful, and they're rallying support around me. But it's mainly been male family offices that have supported me. Now on the other side, where we are now playing a role in fundraising is with the development finance institutions. And we all know DFIs take quite a bit of time. So we recently just concluded the African Investment Forum. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly can hear you. Go
Hello?
ahead. Yes, can hear you perfectly, Roberta.
Hello?
Yes, hello?
Oh.
We can hear you there.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, keep going. We can hear you perfectly.
So we recently, hello? Yeah. Okay, so the IFAC was placed within a boardroom of the African Investment Forum, which is led by the African Development Bank. So we were validated and brought in to, for the AFDB to support us in raising funds. And at that point, we saw that a lot of the DFIs had expressed an interest in what we're doing. But we all know that DFIs take long. So for us to get started, we had to go with family offices. But yes, what I would love to see is that we see a lot of minority investors coming into our portfolio, because what we're trying to develop, and whether it's women or even African Americans in the diaspora that want to connect back to the continent, coming in as LPs into our fund, it will make a great story. And I've seen an example of it with the NBA Africa, which was just set up. And you saw like the entire diaspora kind of uniting behind, something like an MBA for Africa, which was a great, great concept. I would love to rally up support for IFAC in that way, because I believe that the creative economy, which has 16 subsectors, fashion, music, film, is a tool for inclusive growth and development of our continent. This is the only way we can get women employed. It's the quickest way to create female entrepreneurs, creatives. It's the quickest, because if you look at it, not just direct businesses, but also businesses in the supply chain. A lot of creative businesses employ women further down the supply chain. So job, and then for the young people, because this is also a very quick way to create jobs for young people, and also to protect the identity and culture of Africans and to be sustainable. So I would love to see minority groups rallying up behind this. It's a platform that has been built for Africa by Africans. And I would love to see other women come in and support us and ensure that we're successful.
Ani, there's just a question coming through on LinkedIn there. Are men ready for this movement of women rising? And if not, what can we do? You want to take a stab at answering that? Is the world ready for women rising?
Whether or not they're ready, we're coming. But we need men as well. It's a symbiotic relationship. One of our partners runs Boys to Men Foundation in Nigeria, Ms. Ifoma, and she gave me a perspective. She's got boys, sons, and she said, it's also her, as a mother, her responsibility to raise her boys right. And she created Boys to Men Foundation to educate, to train, to converse, for dialogue of how men feel. Because they also have their own problem. We have to have empathy on both sides. We are all humans, right? So it's not against, it's with. I sincerely believe that. So I really believe in dialogue and discourse. I think it's very, very interesting when you can get people to open up authentically, to think and change ideas in their head. It's one thing to have programs, DEI programs, equity inclusion programs, et cetera, spend billions of dollars. I've seen it here in the US. But if organizations here even are not happy, so you can spend billions, programs, training, but if already existing platforms are not in alignment with this new and better wave of women, nothing's going to happen. Passive aggressive behavior at work, not not have an enabling environment to work again, right? So it's men, have to be open. We have to also continue to communicate and express how we really feel as well. A lot of times, even with us, even with myself in the meetings, I've had several of them on different boards, etc., sort of globally, and they say something and I laugh it off, why keep quiet? No, say something. Maybe they don't know. So in answer to that question, yes, men are ready. They have to be ready, and I'm very optimistic as well about that.
I'm glad. We need that optimism, and we're going to build on that optimism. Katharina, you are walking the talk. I mean, we look at your business and you said you employ women. That a conscious decision to create a powerhouse, or did it just happen by chance?
Conscious. However conscious is I didn't do this on purpose, like going out there like, okay, I only want women on my team. And by the way, it's not supposed to stay like this. Like, I want a diverse team. It just happened so that during the start of this business, I met these ladies and they perfectly fit into the whole scenario of, growing my business, etc., with their competencies and their characters and their skills, etc. So it was probably somewhat of a Freudian slippery to do that. I don't know.
We'll capitalize on it. It sounds very good at the early stages, and as you say, you are striving for diversity. But perhaps you can give us a sense of how that team is working together. Would you say it's firing on all cylinders? Do you need that diversity going forward?
Yes, I think that diversity is absolutely mandatory in any sense of the term. May that be gender-based, may that be culture-based, geographically based. I'm a strong believer, and that is the only way to leverage all the skills in a team. And I mean, if you look at, for example, tech investments, and the more diverse the teams are, the better the investments actually perform. So what I preach, I will also apply to my business or to my businesses, because the business where I'm a chairwoman is actually extremely diverse too.
So diversity is important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Everybody.
Absolutely.
I'm going to open up to questions now, and let's see here from Anastasi Akabode. What is the best strategy for future young women in terms of a strategy to exhibit the proper behavior, the role of education, and how to include the country's traditional belief in raising or beliefs in raising women for a proper entrepreneurial education? Roberta, I'm going to send this to you because I think it might be very closely aligned to your background.
Can you repeat it again? Because I didn't hear the line with.
So effectively, Anastasi is wanting to know, what is the best strategy for young women to exhibit the proper behavior and, juxtapose that with a country's traditional belief when it comes to raising women. So cultural expectations, and you want to be an entrepreneur. I mean, this is your story. Yeah. So how do you do that?
So the first thing I would say is that you have to be very intentional, right? And very goal-oriented. And not just because I see a trend in a lot of sub-Saharan African countries where people just jump into a field because maybe their friends are doing it or somebody was doing it, or maybe they've landed into capital and they want to start a business. So by default, I want to start a salon or a fashion business. I think most successful entrepreneurs have an idea. And even if they go into an opportunity by accident, they develop the skill set to be able to manage and grow, which is what happened with me, right? And to grow into that sector and learn. So you need to be very intentional and goal-oriented. I think one key thing is not to be discouraged or be afraid of thinking big. We should all dream big. But as we're dreaming big, we should also have steps towards that dream. So for instance, if I see on Instagram every day that people are flying private jets all over the place, it's a great dream to have, right? As a young entrepreneur, but it doesn't mean that, I'm going to achieve it overnight. it takes a while for all these billionaires that are on Forbes list to actually get that kind of wealth. Sustainable, real wealth takes time to develop. So it's great to think big, but have to, have goals, KPIs. So within this first quarter, this is what I want to achieve. Second quarter, set goals for yourself. Try to achieve those goals and have accountability partners, people that will actually refer you back to your goals to make sure that you're actually delivering. Be authentic and true to yourself, right? I'm not sitting here saying that I'm the best expert in fund management. Trust me, there's so many fund managements in this world. But what I can say is that I've built an entire career on a sector that I saw an opportunity in 10 years ago when people weren't looking at it. And now serious people are looking at it, right? So that means that I am great at having foresight and vision. And I'm great at building towards that foresight and vision. And even in places where I am not equipped, I equip myself through encouraging and educating myself, but I also surround myself with the people that have that skill set that I am lacking to ensure that I reach that goal. So it's important to understand you're not doing it alone. You build a team of people around you. You make sure that you're authentic and you're true. You have strengths, you have weaknesses, building on your strengths, sharpening your weaknesses, and ensuring that people that are on your team are also stronger in areas where you don't have that particular strength. And it's all about team building and team, working together as a team.
And I want to bring Oni in here because Oni, you touched on policy and the right policies. This is a question from Jacqueline Uku, who's saying that she's president of the board of the Western Indian Ocean Marine Science Association, WIOMSA. And a few years back, they established a Women in Marine Science Network. And one of the things they did was to develop a gender policy. Today, she says, we see women occupying multiple spaces in this field of marine science. So perhaps we'll go around the room, Ani, starting with you, in terms of the importance of the development of gender policies. I know this is something that you touched on earlier, Ani.
Very important. Policy is very important to me because I've seen the power of policy. I've seen the power of parliament. I've seen the power of national assemblies, and they can make or break Africa, North America, here in Europe. So for me, if you look, for example, with the IPU, International Parliamentary Union, look into, Rwanda today, is leading the way with most women in parliament at 61%. Then you've got Cuba, I think at 50% or 51%. And then you've got UAE at 50%, right? A few years ago, they were at number 89 in the world, just based on the willpower policies of His Highness, the Sheikh of UAE, or Il Nahyan, were able to galvanize that by policy alone. So there's a strong power, subtle power, sublime power, something in Africa, a very overt power in government, in policy, right? So I always say, let's get more women, in policy and politics, right? Push more young women. We had that energy, right? While simultaneously looking into the economic side as well. If we can really, really, understand bills, understand policy, understand a national assembly, our parliament in Africa, right? From community to state to national, right? We can really unlock some unknown hidden gems there. I believe so.
Katharina, in terms of policy, have you received a leg up from any policy that you've encountered in establishing your business across tech and the corporate finance landscape?
Me personally, not. However, I fully agree with Oni that it's a very important tool to empower women in decision-making in that sense. So I'm German, my nationality is German, and so I vote in Germany. I don't vote in the UK. If I look at the past years of, women taking on, we have a Minister of Foreign Affairs that has been recently appointed, and that received the worst comments even before she started her work. And now she's shown up and actually doing an absolutely great job at this specific task. Even bringing feminist foreign policy into, as an expression into the game. I think it's so important, and it's such an important tool to actually, just make half of the population heard.
Roberta, let's say you are now given the task of mentoring future women leaders. What is the first thing that you are going to empower them with? And this is about, we're not talking about school-going age. We're talking about women who have achieved at perhaps secondary institutions, and they are now ready to learn from an entrepreneur who's walked the talk. What is the first rule that you are going to stipulate?
First, I have to ensure that a lot of people kind of unlearn all the experiences from the past and kind of rewire themselves for, like the next, I would say, decade to come, and you handle it decade by decade because things change after 10 years, right? But I think in our system, we've been wired to feel that we are not capable, we're not good enough, we're not, because we haven't seen many examples. And like my fellow panelists said, even the examples we've seen, women have been brought down and been shamed and character assassinated for even wanting to be in it. So that is what we see. That is our perception. So the first thing is to basically do a little bit of internal kind of exercise to kind of unlearn and rewire and reprogram our mindsets to win and to be successful. That is the first. And once we've rewired, we want to then equip ourselves with everything that we need to be successful. And number one is education. One of the key things that I do in my own philanthropic endeavors is to ensure that Africans get scholarships to learn in other markets, because I want them to leave their comfort zone and go elsewhere and learn. Because I feel when you're outside of your comfort zone and you're left to survive in the wild, you're very creative, right? And innovative and resilient. And it's very important. I mean, this is also what I went through. So I give that opportunity. So I want people to be educated. I want to build their capacity, and then I want to give them money. I feel like financial part is also very important, because that when you have the financial capabilities as an entrepreneur, you're confident, right? You can go into any boardroom or any partner and negotiate the right terms because you already have. You're not going to take anything you're given, because when you're going from a position of vulnerability and weakness, which is often done because of economic, we're not economically empowered. We don't negotiate the best for, that we deserve. So economic empowerment is also very important to instill that confidence in entrepreneurs, to make sure that they can get a very fair value for whatever it is that you're offering. So those are the three main things that I would focus on.
Right, so we're going to build on this. We're looking here at rewiring, so believing that you can do it rather than all the feelings of negativity and inadequacy. Education is a key focus, and as you said, through your own experience, that if you don't understand a topic, this is also something I deploy all the time. If I am to lead a discussion on a topic, be it carbon credits, I go back to the drawing board and learn everything I can possibly know about that topic so that I can demonstrate my area of influence confidently and not fear putting a foot wrong. So I agree with you 100%. Teaching yourself those gaps that you can capitalize on really helps to create confidence. And then, as you said, the finance. Now, you're going to help empower with finance. Finance is difficult to come by. So we need to, and again, perhaps leveraging this network, realizing that we need to look at capital. Yes, we can discuss ideas, but how do we start helping one another to grow our businesses, which is where the money element comes in. Ani, so this is where we are. We are nurturing this generation of leaders walking into the boardroom. These are young, capable women. We've now had Roberta's magic. What is your magic? What are you going to add to this? Or you can double up on any of the elements that Roberta has actually referred to.
She's completely right. I'm going to go. I say a strong sense of self is key. strong sense of self. I think, Katharina, when I met Katharina, you could feel, I just said, it was an aha moment for me, that sense of alignment, because you're going to be pushed forward, backward, left and right all the time. And it's literally mountains and valleys. The higher you go, personally, emotionally, more compromise, more sacrifice, constantly, much more than men. It's just how it is. So a strong sense of self, right, has been my experience, and some of my peers and friends' experience is very important from an internal perspective. From an external perspective, for me, it's community. Know your tribe. You can feel it as well. Know your tribe, because I can talk all day long to this great Roberta barking up the wrong tree. Roberta, invest in me, invest in my people, invest in my people, invest in my people. Roberta says to me, she's investing in creatives. I'm giving her technology. I mean, barking up the wrong tree. Know your tribe. You can't keep knocking on doors that won't open. There's so many doors. And I disagree with you when you say that money's hard to find. There's a lot of money out there. It's how do you organize yourself, timing, low-hanging fruit, opportunity. A lot of times in Africa, I live in Uganda and some other countries where you go and you see people from World Bank, IMF, investors waiting, in offices, trying to give money, but it's not packaged properly. It's not organized properly. The financial, the legal, the framework, there is money. So, for me, it's very simple. Know your tribe, know who you want to talk to, and it makes it sounds complicated, but it's very simple, and that's what I've learned over the years. You can't badger people, or you just have to know what you want, how you want, and if that person is interested, right? From that external part. So internally, center yourself, alignment. Externally, know your people, know your community, know your tribe. And once that aligns together, irrespective of difficulty, of opportunity, you will always be like an ocean, basically, solid, right? Because you know yourself internally and externally.
And that is a key tenet of media as well, is know your audience. So know your tribe, make those connections. I think that's really, really salient advice. And of course, you've got this element of confidence coming in strongly again in terms of what Ani is advocating. Have a strong sense of self. I just wanted to, before Katharina, we get your comments, what about making mistakes? I've only now become more comfortable with, I do make mistakes. What I do try not to do is make the same mistake twice. I use a mistake as a learning opportunity. But in the earlier parts of my career, I would berate myself for making a mistake. So for me, it's a learning opportunity, but you're a fool if you make the same mistake twice. Ani, what is your mantra around mistakes?
Great question, but I love it. I am a risk taker, but I think I'm a calculated risk taker. And now I'm getting older, I'm getting more risk averse, but then I consciously take more risk again now, right? And pain and pleasure goes hand in hand. So a lot of times nowadays, we're always constantly focused on the good, having better days, having more better days. Well, guess what? Each good day is going to have a bad day. So you know how to deal with both, right? And mistakes are joyful. Someone asked me a question, one of our rising women, and I asked her, what are you doing now? She's quite successful. What are you doing now? Because I'm in transition. She's like, I don't know. and I was at loss for words. And I'm like, what do I say now? She goes, I caught you, didn't I? You're not used to that, are you? When someone doesn't know where they're going, what's next for them? So it's mistakes are part of it. That's a beautiful part of it, and that goes back to having a sense of self, right? Irrespective, something will happen. I think we have to get more and more comfortable, especially in Africa, in African women as well, because we're not very risk averse. I call it silent leadership sometimes. We know all the stuff and we don't impart it anywhere. We keep quiet. It's not graceful to talk about what you're doing. You're being too bashful, overconfident, cocky, all these things. I want to learn from Roberta. Roberta, please, hello, but if you talk too much, oh, she's showing off, right? No, I want to learn. I want to understand. So mistakes are part of it, And I always say, especially for Africa, as an African myself, in Nigeria, I'm always open to our women, younger, older, to tell me how they made it, how they did it. I want to know the mistakes. It's very, very important. Not only how you are when you're successful, but how do you react when you fail? What do you do?
Exactly. What you learn from failure. That's got to be 101 of mentorship, is dealing with failure. And when they say you fall down, you've got to get up twice as strong. Katharina, let me not derail your strategy for molding the leading women of the future, the rising women, but perhaps also touch on the mistake element.
When I launched my company, I was so unconscious of what I was doing. I was making all the mistakes in the world. Like, when I look back at it right now, I can make you like a list of 30 things straight up that I really failed in.
Please share those with us.
Oh,
we can get that documentation.
That went from not barking up the wrong tree, not knowing my tribe, to not doing enough sales, not putting myself enough out there, to having the wrong conversations with there was so many. Probably. And as you said, it's like the most important thing is not to make them twice. So as soon as you realize, okay, this was a mistake, adjust. And I must say, it was actually really, really hard to keep my confidence and just to keep going. It was not easy at all. It was a very, very lonely path.
All right, so now I'm going to get you to add. We've had Roberta saying unlearn, this focus on excellence, on education, on taking that responsibility yourself. And then, of course, the financial part, which Roberta and Ani are going to, they've both put up their hands to say this is not difficult. There's just the packaging that's important. So ladies, you know where everybody's going to go after this conversation, knocking on both of your doors. And then, of course, Ani saying and reiterating that sense of self, which I think is the equivalent to unlearn, the debilitating, the nervousness, the inadequacy that perhaps inherently you believe in, and know your tribe. You've touched on that, Katharina. You said that in some instances that mistake involved approaching the wrong tribe, not knowing who you were approaching. What else can you add to this great equation?
So I'm going to double up on the money because I am a woman of money. There's a lot of money going in and out my way because that's part of my job. And I will add another notion, which is the notion of power that comes with the money. And regardless of where I move, may that be here in continental Europe, in the UK, or when I go to Africa and speak with my friends there, there's always the same thing. Women are uncomfortable speaking about money and owning their power. And that has to stop, please. There's nothing wrong with wanting money, having a lot of money in your account, spending your money, earning a lot of money, talking about money, going into an office, sitting down and I want to be paid this and I want to be paid that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And this is a very, very important message because there's so much shame promoted around the relationship with money and women. Like, you're greedy, and I'm not taking the other word, but we will all know what I'm talking about, and you're not supposed to do this, and money is bad for you, and it's morally not okay, and then it probably, some twisted other moral judgments coming in. Money is power, and it's absolutely fine to wanting power. Power is not a bad thing. It actually gives you the freedom to make choices.
I think that's a great place to end this conversation. Ladies, I love the way that you have molded this future generation of leaders, of women leaders that are going to really, I suppose, walk in your footsteps because you are the trailblazers. So thank you so much for sharing your insights. Ani, thank you for putting this platform together. I really think that that's the starting point, and the more power we have as a collective, the more that we can actually change the world. So Aningo, Katharina, Dalka, and Roberta, Annan, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation on women in Africa. It's been an absolute pleasure to have your insights shared with our audience today, and hopefully this is the start of many, many more conversations which result in execution to come. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having us.